Okay, and we are live with Musicians and Makers podcast, dedicated to interviewing and promoting artists and musicians across a broad spectrum of genres and mediums. I'm here today with my co-host Steve, as well as Eric from the band Au Revoir.
Hey.
Hello, nice to have you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so Au Revoir, I mean, this project's going back quite some ways. I think the first time I saw you was actually just a couple of years ago at AS220 in Providence.
Yep.
I worked there myself, and I know you had a couple friends on that show that we might have in common, like the Solace, John Pagano.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, good guy, and awesome band. But so that was probably the first time I saw you. I was pretty much fangirling at that point because I'd been listening to you guys, I think, since like In the Key of Night in 2012.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was a super cool album for me. So just going back to that album, just tell me how like the process was for writing, and like I think it was demos first, and that became a bigger project.
Yeah. So how it started essentially was I was coming out of playing bass in like a indie rock band, and I like had my uncle's old guitar, and I started playing around on the guitar. And then I was like, I think I want to start playing guitar more. And this was like back in 2009. So I bought like a really shitty Telecaster from a friend and just download. I'm using Reaper right now to record my audio ends. And I just downloaded Reaper then and just started like recording all of these guitar ideas. Mm-hmm. And I like at some point in 2009, I took like just a road trip, and I came back and I was like, I think I want to keep working on this stuff. And two of my best friends at the time, I showed them what I had, and they were like, maybe we can work on this with you. Mm. So the two guys that get the credit on that album are Matt Olson and Dane Viglione. Mm-hmm. And basically through 2010, we were working on all of that music just in the key of night. So since that album, we have never consistently practiced weekly as a band. So writing that album, we were able to just meet every week and work on the stuff. And then we recorded it ourselves. Yeah, it was just like my first time being the primary writer for a musical project. So you being there all along with us, you can kind of see how my writing has changed over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you certainly get a lot darker now. But like going back to that album, what were some of your influences as one of the primary writers?
So it was just very honestly, it was like that movie 28 Weeks Later.
Okay.
I was like, fuck, this really makes me feel some weird shit, and I want to kind of emote and make something that makes someone feel that exact same way. So I was listening to a lot of Sigur Rós at the time. I was listening to that soundtrack a ton. I just kind of started getting into Godspeed. And then, a lot of the other just rock stuff. So like Thrice was a big influence for me. I don't necessarily listen to Thrice so much anymore, but the things they were doing at the time, like they put out the Alchemy Index, where they explored like different sounds that they can make and this and that, as like, they weren't just a straight up rock band anymore. So things like that kind of gave me these ideas that like, hey, it doesn't have to be so conventional all the time. And so like the idea was, when I was asking people around, like friends to play, I was like, there's like the idea would be there's no rules, and as many noises and pedals as you can kind of bring to the table. So yeah, that was kind of the idea from the start to get it going.
Yeah, I think Thrice was a huge influence for you, Steve.
You made my heart sing when you said Thrice. Just because the fire's so heavy, the water runs so experimental and electronica. Then you have
Yeah.
earth and air, which are a little more mellow. Like that's why I love Thrice Forever, because they can expand on so many different sounds. They don't care who likes it. They want to make what they want to like, and like as you say, your music taste does change as you get older. So it's
Right,
definitely
yeah.
like huge respect to that.
Yeah. Awesome. I couldn't agree more.
For me, oddly enough, I think the first time I heard of Au Revoir, I was on like Reddit, and I was just like, I was starting to get into screamo, and I was looking for like different ways to discover music, and I ended up on like some like if you like page, and it was like if you
Okay.
like explosions in the sky.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I always found that like when I try to explain to someone who might not like listen to the genre, and I'm trying to show them like your music, I kind of go towards that, like it's like explosions in the sky, but like a little heavier.
Right,
You
yeah.
know,
And that's like the only way that you can explain it to someone who's never heard of like the genre or bands in the genre, or when I think I'm explaining it to someone who's like super normie and they're like, "Oh, like Godspeed. Oh, like Explosion in the Sky." I was like, "Okay, you have a basic idea because you know the bigger bands in the genre."
sure.
Yeah.
So you
So,
mentioned the writing process is a little crazy now. I mean, so the last time you all worked in a room together was for the album in 2012. Uh, can you speak to that a little bit?
yeah, so what had happened was Matt, the drummer, it started to get a little too, I guess, serious, or I wanted to kind of start pushing the band. It was like as soon as 2012 hit, we didn't have any music out, but I was like, let's start playing as much as possible. Because for me, it was like, I want this to be like, I want to put everything I have into this band. So that's why we've had a bunch of lineup changes over the years, because just people who came in couldn't handle it, so they had to step out. So when Matt left, we started looking for a drummer, and we had this other kid. His name was actually Matt as well, and he really just ended up playing locally. And it wasn't until November or October of 2012 that Tyler Gilbert joined on drums, and he was from New Jersey but living up in Boston. So that's where it started with the we'll just practice when we can sort of vibe, and kind of since then it's always been that someone that's in the band is not in New Jersey. So we had never really had full band practices unless we scheduled them, like everyone took off work, essentially like a tour or something like that, you know? Like we need to make all of these changes to our normal personal schedules so that we can get together to have band practice.
Sounds pretty tough.
So, yeah. It definitely is. So, which is totally the reason why we, as a whole, just work so slow in terms of releases, and it got to a point where everyone's getting a little bit older, so they want to put a little more importance on their personal time. So even touring has slowed down for us.
For a while there was a big push for touring, though. I think right around
Yeah.
the time when Veils came out, that was like your
Yeah.
big push for European tours and such.
Yeah.
And I see that as like a big turning point. I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, it's when you guys got inherently darker. It was more chaotic. There was still like those light choir like moments, but like even the
Yeah.
description you find online. I'm gonna read it here for the listeners. When you look at Veils, you get the description: Au Revoir have reformed themselves as a huge serpent coiling tightly around the roots that led us into the wet underworld of Veils. It is not only a world of wet grassy plains and eternal spring, but one where we find ourselves in the deepest of caverns, watched over by the ghosts of the dead, awaiting impending doom. Veils is richly bleak with decadence, but the listener never succumbs or falls prey. He watches the ground ripple like water and feels an irresistible urge to be lost in Veils' violent sway. That right there is like, when you talk about setting the scene in 2012, that right there is like, that gives me so much imagery. Where was that coming from?
The label we were working with, Elusive Sounds, they were way more into promotion than we were at the time. So they're the ones that did that, like, really, I guess, description of the album. But I mean, it kind of is pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Where, like, as you listen to the progression of the music, it is just like, you know, things you're feeling and how you want to kind of get those things out in the form of music and stuff like that. So for me, there was like kind of like a description or a summary that, or like a bio that this guy David Ziedler from Young Epoch, he wrote, and his was more just like how we're blending DIY punk ethos into like instrumental music and this and that. So me being a more like straightforward type of guy, like I leaned more towards that bio rather than this like super like novel-esque bio of the album. But you know, I feel like it proves its point. You know.
Yeah. Today was the first time I've seen it. I'm
Okay.
feeling a little more
Yeah.
cave-like since I've now seen it, you know. But
Also, not to correct you, but it's Velas.
Velas, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did correct me. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a kind of a theme for the album, and we were, from the songs, we were getting like a water type of vibe. So Veles is the god of like water and the underworlds in Slavic culture. If you go back to the description and kind of get like, oh, there's this god that's involved, it'll probably make somewhat more sense as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
That being said, you know, for the most part, you're fairly instrumental. I know vocals are kind of added in a little bit more as we go along, but even that, like, they're blended into the songs where it almost becomes its own instrument.
Right.
What did the songs mean to you, and how do you really like make those meanings stick, aside from like a description like this?
For me, a big part was always, I was one of those like, leave it up to the listener to kind of take what they want from it and how they feel about the song, and it is whatever it is to them. And we would just give this like kind of guidance via the titles. And I feel like with the newer stuff, I want to have more of like a very direct definition or description of what the songs are about and what you are supposed to feel. Like, it's not just what you're taking away, it's also, this is what we want you to feel. So with those songs and the titles, it's always been just like trying to create a sad emotion, or I guess depressed, and then mixed in with like light and happy, and just kind of like all those things you feel in a normal day. I think a lot of the songwriting and how we want to navigate the songwriting. The lyrics themselves are more personal. In the bottom, Carl, the bassist, he wrote the lyrics for that song. I know from just his personal, he is afraid of heights, and that the lyrics in that song, he's on a trestle and he falls, and it just kind of deals with fear and all those sorts of things. On top of that, the vibe of the music kind of gives into that like kind of chaotic feeling. And then the lyrics in Sinking were more just like a feeling of hopelessness and loss. And to top it off, the song is probably one of the heavier songs on the album. So they kind of, mesh well together, the lyrics and the song itself. But in the future, we're probably going to incorporate more lyrics. And personally, I want them to have more of like an intention with the meaning of the song.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about 3 guitarists and a bassist. And,
Right.
I mentioned seeing you at AS220. For our listeners that aren't familiar, AS220, it's a pretty small venue. Have you ever walked up on stage and someone was just like, dude, you guys are too loud? Do you get that?
Yeah, like you know, we end up playing a lot of the places in the States where it's fine.
Yeah.
Uh, like no one really gives a shit. But in Canada and in Europe, it's just like constant
Mhm.
because they're so used to having like using their monitors. They're so used to having like the sound guy kind of be in control of what it sounds out on the floor side. So for us, yeah, it's something that we deal with so much that we started for the last couple tours. We started saying to the people that were looking into booking for us that, hey, this venue needs to be okay with a certain amount of decibel level.
Mhm.
And I think we were like, I guess 115 is like if they're cool with that, then we should be okay. So yeah, it happens a ton. The one thing I will say about AS220 though is like we've played everywhere in the room except for the stage.
Yeah.
And everywhere in that room has sounded amazing.
Yeah.
It's a pretty incredible venue.
Uh,
Is it doing okay? Like, is it going to make it through?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part, we have some parts that are closed. What some people don't know from the outside is, aside from like being a venue and a restaurant, we also we house artists. We have youth programs. We have an
Right,
industries
okay.
program. So we have other moving parts that are doing some things to an extent now. Um, that being said, I mean, if we're going to plug it, AS20 could certainly use your help and donations.
Hell yeah.
Keep me
Yeah.
employed.
Support those venues.
So, but I mean, we're looking fairly bright. Myself, I'm the manager of the restaurant, and
Okay.
I kind of look to like what some of these small businesses are doing, and just to think like we have like a whole financial back and like a family that wants to like keep us alive. We have a community.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite restaurants locally just like put up something yesterday that like they're done, and
Okay.
it's just sad to see. So relatively we're okay, you know.
Okay.
Um, but it's weird. It's definitely weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. uh, yeah. No. To speak back to like the sound and stuff too. I remember going to Europe and I played in like this church in Gorlitz. It was like built into like stone underneath like this other crazy church, I guess. And like, the sound guy there is like trying to hit us with the fog machines and wants to control all the levels like crazy. And I just remember like we bought him like a beer or something just to like keep him off. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
definitely a thing. Even like, do you guys like blow the power out? You know what I mean? Like I've done a couple of bands that just the light
It's
show gets you.
Right. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the band A Film in Color. They're also from Jersey.
Yep.
Good friends of ours. I've experienced, even though they're only a 3-piece, I've experienced them blowing the power way more than we have blown the power.
Cool.
I guess they run the same amount of heads as we do, but they're like turned all the way up.
Yeah.
Like we're loud, but we have to compete with one another. So it's only, to a certain point. I remember in Montreal, we were playing this fest. It was like the inaugural fest that this group Broken Chord was doing. And we blew the power when we played, I think, 3 times.
Yeah.
And it was we had a friend that was doing projections with us, and it got to a point where it's like, okay, dude, you just gotta like unplug and pack it up, and we'll just continue. So it was okay once he left the stage, but the organizer that runs Broken Chord, he like it's infamous to him because he'll always bring it up at this point.
Yeah.
I did a string of shows with like this band called the Blue Letter. I think it was back in like 2010 maybe ish, 2012 ish. And there were some super rocking dudes. But they were also like just a wall of sound and just a million
Right.
lights and foot pedals.
Was that when the one guitarist had the gigantic like coffin of guitar pedals?
It was just, it was massive.
Yeah.
And I just remember like we played like a couple like bigger venues or, medium venues with them and it was okay. But we did like a pool house with them like in the middle of Massachusetts and they like blew the power to like this entire farm, and like the farmers like running across the field to go get everything back up and running. It was super cool. And just to see like man, even just to lug all that gear for a small show like that, that's like
right, yeah,
that's all the power to you.
So sometimes you're like, what the fuck are we doing this for? And a lot of times it is worth it. But we're definitely, I think just in that way, we're just like, okay, we got to make sure that whatever we're doing, like if there's only one person here, we'll just not even bring everything in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, the guitarist of Au Revoir, when I met him, he was still playing in this band Shiloh. He bought that foot pedal case from the guy from Blue Letter.
Cool.
So he is a tiny person and he could literally fit inside of that case.
Wow.
And he played in my basement, my mom's old house, and it took up like half the room of the basement because it was so huge. That thing was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, Shiloh is very familiar to your sound as well. So was that kind of like prior Au Revoir and then he led into Au Revoir, or were they going on at the same time?
Yeah, so I guess a backstory on that. In 2012, when Au Revoir did our first tour, I met the guys from Shiloh when we played in Richmond, and then Tyler Mandich, who plays third guitar in Au Revoir, he was living in Wilmington, and he booked our Wilmington show. So it was just like the way, you meet all these people through touring and stuff and how they kind of end up in your life. Those guys, they were always like, if you need anybody to fill in, just let us know. And we kept in touch over the years because of the amount of times that we passed through Richmond or North Carolina or whatever it was. And eventually I was like, hey, you guys want to play this tour? You want to play this tour? And then it turned into, do you just want to stay in the band? And that's where so since late 2014, it's been that they've been playing in the band permanently.
Cool.
Yeah. And Shiloh has been a thing since I think 2010 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And some of the other bands, I mean, you guys between you have like quite a few other projects going on. Burial Dance sticks out to me. I heard a couple songs off Bandcamp. What's going on with that?
So Burial Dance is the other band that I'm in. It's sitting more on the screamo side, your subgenre of punk and hardcore or whatever. Right now, so we put out those two songs on Bandcamp, and it was kind of like a interim sort of thing because we had like a little weekend tour that we were doing, and we wanted to have some music out there. So we recorded those two songs really quick, and they weren't part of a release. So we were just like, let's get them out. And the future is that we're waiting to release an EP that we recorded last year. And I can't say right now who it's coming out through. But I think that we are going to announce all that and then do some like premiere the album or whatever, like next month maybe. It's interesting though the way that worked out because the songs that are on that EP are like the first songs that we wrote, and then the two songs that are out on Bandcamp now are written after the stuff that's going to come out later this year.
Cool.
So everything is slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're definitely looking forward to hearing it. And, when that time comes around, don't be afraid to reach out. We'd love to talk some more about that.
Hell yeah.
Definitely reminds me of, were you involved in What of Us? That was a past project.
Yeah. Me, Tom Schlatter, Eric Morrow, and Ross Hamilton. Me playing guitar and Tom playing bass. And this band, Burial Dance, is same three guys, but replace Tom with our friend Alex Lee. Alex is playing guitar and I'm playing bass. So you'll find some similarities because some of the members are the same.
Cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had some awesome splits with that too. The one that sticks out to me is like Coma Regalia, you know?
Of course.
Why did that project cease to exist?
What ended up happening was Tom moved to Albany. We weren't as busy as we, I guess, could have been. And Tom has all this musical energy. So he started another band, Hundreds of AU. And Hundreds of AU, with the lineup that they got, was a bit more flexible with their time. So they had weekends free, they had summers free. So it was a lot easier for them to get out and play than it was for one of us to get out and play. Just the distance and what we were playing and this and that, it kind of just fell to the wayside. Not on anyone's part. It was no one's fault necessarily. It just kind of fell to the wayside. And then Burial Dance, we started playing with each other just so we could have something more local. And it kind of just went our separate ways. Tom started focusing more on Hundreds of AU, and then we started focusing more on Burial Dance. And one of us kind of got the shit end of that deal. But it was a ton of fun. And it definitely pushed my boundaries and limits as a guitar player. Because I went in there and I was just like, this is going to take some work for me. I've never played I never played guitar this fast. So they definitely were pretty patient with my guitar playing. Yeah.
Time can be such a factor too. I was lucky enough to play with Soul Glow last year, and they were in Europe at the time. And I was talking to them. I think they said they were out for a month or a month and a half straight. And I can't even imagine being able to take that much time off. I did 10 days, and after the 10 days, we're ready to rip each other's heads off. You know,
right?
What was your biggest string? Do you think of a tour?
It was for Velis. We did, I think, between 40 and 42 days. Wow. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but I know it was 35, 37 shows within the 40 days or 42 days. And that was only because we couldn't get those shows booked. If we had it our way, it would have been 40 for 40 or 42 for 42. And then a couple of years before that, the longest we did was, I think, 35 days. Wow. Just a full US, and that was as a 3-piece. So when we did the Velis full US as a 5-piece, it was we can't sleep in the van because there's so many people. Where as a 3-piece, you could spread out, sleep in the trunk or whatever of the van. We did have to sleep in the van, but it was more of a priority to find somewhere to stay if we could. I remember getting to the last week of that tour and being this feels so normal, I can keep going.
Yeah.
But I know some of the guys were just I'm ready to go home. I'm good. Yeah. It's I've had enough. I was have you?
It definitely becomes a way. I think even when I came back from Germany, we pretty much hit the road to do New Friends Fest. I think we played the same year together, 2019.
Yeah.
But, we pretty much hit the road right away for that. And Lord Snow was playing that show. And I think they were still on tour from when we were with them in Europe. And it just you could see the attitude change where they were still so happy to be there. But it's also just they look like they've seen a war, you know?
Right. Yeah. I remember coming off a tour or just not being on a tour and having friends come through my town that had only seen me on tour and them being oh, so this is what you look like when you're not on tour. Just not tired and not greasy and all of those things. So yeah, you definitely get that incredible weathered. I'm having fun, but I also hate myself sort of vibe.
Yeah. I feel like it's harder to get like housed in the US too.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my god. Yeah, you go to Europe
Yeah.
and it's like there's a meal at every show,
Yeah.
like over here it's just kind of like what basement are you sleeping in or where can I
Right.
park?
Yeah. I describe European touring to people as like professional DIY.
Yeah.
like every venue has a sound system and lights and a place for you to stay, and they all have food for you on the spot and all that stuff. And then you come to the States and you're just like, here's maybe a speaker for the one microphone we have for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
90% less curry.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. You played Dunk Fest. That's a pretty big festival. What was that like?
Definitely one of our best experiences as a band. And just more, not only because of the professionalism of the festival, from the sound to the stage to the scheduling and how they take care of not only the artists but the attendees. But the vibe was just insane, and like, we like to make fun of everybody.
Yeah.
We're not like we're not always the nicest people, but like going there and just like everyone is so nice and everyone's just like stoked to be there and they're happy to listen to instrumental music for 36 straight hours or 72 straight hours.
Yeah.
It was definitely incredible. And it's definitely like a goal for us with the next release to get back out to Dunkfest and to try and play some other fests in Europe and maybe as well as Canada. Just because, like, the way that they do things out there is so different, and it feels like what you always imagined being in a real band would feel like.
Yeah. I remember like the after party at New Friends. Just like the whole mood that day was awesome. But then like they're like, we're gonna have an emo after party at this bar next door, and I'm like me being who I am in my head, I'm going like, we're gonna sit there and listen to like fucking Brand New and all these bands over and over again. I'm like, I don't know, let's go for one beer. And I feel like, like 2 beers in, I'm like screaming My Chemical Romance in the back of the room,
Yeah, we were there. It was so tight and so sweaty.
Yeah.
It was insane. We tried to put in some like Fuel by Metallica. But I think everyone was too drunk to remember that we asked to do that song. Yeah. That weekend though, we didn't really know what to expect, especially being, not the same band as everybody else, but it was just like so inviting and the vibe was so incredible and everyone was like just super welcoming and nice and literally like just talking to everybody. The dude who was playing drums for us, he was like, I just talked to the guy from Kid Crash.
Yeah.
And he was like fanboying so hard, but he was just so stoked that he got to talk to the dude from Kid Crash.
Yeah, I remember like, I think it was one of the guys from City of Caterpillar was like hanging out outside, and like someone was like, the guy from City of Caterpillar needs a joint, and just went like running looking for a joint from him. And if it wasn't them, I'm sorry, I'm throwing shade on the name, but no, it cracked me up.
Yeah. That's how it went the whole weekend.
Yeah. So, who are some of your favorite musicians to listen to?
I always go back to this band, Murdered by Death. Are you familiar with them at all?
I'm not really familiar with them, no.
No. Okay. So I've been listening to them since like, I guess like 2004 or something like that. They're just this like weird mix of like Western and like country and indie rock. It's like, but it's like dark and it has like more of a Johnny Cash like rock vibe to it.
Okay. So like a J Jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
maybe more thematic and like anthemic. So they've been a band I've been listening to for years, and just a band whose albums are always so consistently strong, and everything they put out is great. I've never had a moment with them where I've been like, I'm done. I'm not interested anymore. So with them, it's always been very consistent. Against Me is a band that I have adored for probably about the same amount of time. Me Without You. I was really into Sigur Rós for a long time. And then, not that they've put anything out recently, but kind of fell off that train. But they definitely were an inspiration for me to kind of like the world of the music that I had started writing in. Bruce Springsteen.
Cool.
Huge favorite, not just because I'm from Jersey, but it definitely plays a part.
We hear it all throughout your music.
So something a little funny there. In the Key of Night, we ripped some of his lyrics. So the last song on In the Key of Night, he's got lyrics from his song Atlantic City. It's like everything dies. That's a fact. Everything dies. Someday comes back. And we did basically the same lyrics, but changed a word or two. And I was like, this is my nod to Bruce. And I'm gonna I hope that I am making everyone proud from New Jersey right now.
Nice.
That era, Neil Young is a big favorite of mine. Not more recently, but he's kind of like a singer-songwriter guy. Jose Gonzalez, his solo albums are acoustic. And generally, I don't really like acoustic music. But he does more like drony type stuff on his guitar. So it's a lot of like the same chord, but the dynamic changes. His music was always really interesting to me because it wasn't that generic, like poppy sounding acoustic stuff. Later years, it's like Young Widows. Tyler Bean from Burlington. He got me into Songs Ohia, where one of my favorite albums, probably of all time at this point, is Electric Magnetic Co. And Company, whatever. But that falls under Songs Ohia. So I just listened to that one, and then more recently I dug deeper into the catalog, and it was like, holy fuck, this is as sad as I need it to be right now. Amun Ra is a big one for me. I've seen them a couple times, and it's just like perfection every time.
Yeah, Young Widows, they're super cool. I missed my chance to see them. They were supposed to play the celebration of life and art for Caleb Schofield, who passed away. Right. That's Cave In, Old Man Gloom, Converge was at that show as well, and the Cancer Conspiracy.
Wait, was that the one in LA or the one on the East Coast?
East Coast, Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think something happened with Young Widows. I think they had a family member of their own pass away or something.
Right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, didn't get to see them, but also it is what it is. I did get to see J Jail. That was kind of like how I discovered them. They opened up for Daughters in Boston. My buddy was doing merch for Daughters for the show, so I just kind of went in. And I don't know if you're familiar with them. I know you said Murder by Death and that Johnny Cash type voice, but they're just like, man, the way they can command a room with just so much open space, and just like that ambiance, it's mesmerizing,
So I haven't gotten too deep into J Jail, but I saw J Jail as the backing band for Emma Ruth Rundle.
That's his wife.
Yeah. And it was fucking incredible. They were so good.
She's so good live too. I saw her at AS220 and it was just her and her guitar. I don't know if she played with more of a band when you saw her, but man,
she had the full band when I saw her that time. More recently, I saw her with Cult of Luna.
Yeah,
and she was playing solo then. I'm just a weird guy, I guess. But I liked the full band more than I liked her solo. It was still commanding and really cool. But there was just something about like the beating drums and like, all the backing guitars and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Jay Jail too, is he just has that beat going the whole time and just controls it. Yeah, that's a really cool sector to kind of like see what has come out of their little group,
Right, yeah. It's crazy because Sargent House bands always kind of like, I feel like they stick together, but a lot comes out of all those bands, and it's pretty incredible that they have so much output and stuff.
So why do you make art?
For me, it's the easiest, best, but also hardest way for me to express myself. It's something that I have been intrigued by and loved since I was just like a young kid. Music has always been a big part of my life. I just remember, I don't know if you would know, but there were like those infomercials for like oldies songs and soundtracks or like compilation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So and I don't know if my parents bought that specific one, but I just remember being like 6 or 7 years old and having all these like solid goldies albums. And I would just like play them and like just like constantly. And that music always stuck with me, and since I was young, music has just been something that I wanted to pursue. And even if I wasn't good at it, I didn't really give a shit. I wanted to try. I would still say that I'm still not like a great musician, but I'm persistent. So something's got to work at that point when you're trying so hard. It's always been something that I needed to do, something that I wanted to do, and having the ability and privilege to make music is one of the main things that like just contributes to my happiness and livelihood. I know that's fucking cliche, but like, I don't know, man. It's just how I feel,
We try to ask that question every show, and even saying it feels cliche to ask.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like there's always something that comes out, and I discover a little bit more about someone and just like where they came from, like that little golden oldies thing. You know what I mean? It's like it always just draws out just like some essence of like where it came from. It's so cool to see that we all come from these different places. And I think what you said too about the privilege to make, it's huge. We don't all have that, and the fact that we can celebrate it, good for us. Rock on.
Yeah.
That being said, you did a split with Tyler Daniel Bean. I know you talked about him briefly for a minute. That was at Dead Air. I've talked about Dead Air in a past episode I recorded there. I think Will is like the best. Super cool guy. What was the experience like for you? That was like a live recording, right?
Yeah, it was mostly live. We just went back because the lyrics for the song that we did weren't, we had never done them over the music at that point. So when we were playing that song live, up until we recorded it, we weren't doing it with the vocals. So that was the only thing we kind of overdubbed. I'm going to be extremely frank with you about this. Because for me, it wasn't what I thought it would be.
Okay.
It wasn't until like maybe a year or two ago that I knew that like Steve Albini had this like super hands-off approach, and just like that sort of thing. So when we went in there, Will's got that attitude where it's just like, yeah, do your thing.
Yeah.
And my like one of my first things that I said to him was like, "Oh, this is really cool. I've never been in like a real studio before," because everything we recorded up to that point was home recorded.
Sure.
Or like we did drums in a friend's studio, but we never recorded full bands, everything at a studio. It was all at home. So I was like looking to Will for like some guidance or some opinions and this and that, and it's not what I got. And I left there and I was like, what the fuck?
It's pretty much the closest you get to a DIY studio too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, I totally get it now. But I remember being in the moment, just being like, I need to know if my guitar sounds good, and he won't tell me.
Yeah, he's got that very light voice. It's just kind of like a yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. So when I heard you on the previous podcast talk about Dead Air and talking about that exactly and that experience, and I was like, yeah, I guess that's the way he is.
Definitely.
Yeah, so when we recorded like Velas, it was with our friend Scott, and he was a lot more hands on. He was helping us get the tones, and he was like, "No, you can make that sound better," and this and that. And I think me, being the person I am, where I not that I need like the validation, but more just like that assertion, like let's make this better or this and that. I enjoyed recording with Will, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And that's just because I thought it was going to be something completely different going in. I had like this notion that it was going to be like this really cool, like professional experience, I guess. But it was just DIY as fuck.
Oh yeah, you're hanging out,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine fitting all of those people in that room. You know, to record, that's a feat in itself.
It was funny. I think he had enough isolation.
Like his little closets, yeah.
Yeah, the closets, or the bass was in the room with the drums.
Okay.
I don't entirely remember. Recording that day with him, we played in Buffalo the night before. So we had to drive overnight to get there by 10 a.m. And I remember maybe sleeping, like we pulled over and I slept for like a half hour on like the highway in a rest stop, and it was like, okay, we gotta start driving again. So when we got there, we were pretty super beat. And then by the end of it, when they started mixing and stuff, or like going over some of that I remember just like clonking out on the couch and waking up, and we were listening to it in the van. And I was like, yeah, sure, it sounds fine. I'm too tired to make a decision right now.
Tyler Bean's a 7-piece, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking, like, I was talking about you guys being a 5-piece in that room.
Right. Yeah.
Whoa.
So he had like the keyboard in the live room. I think the violin was in the live room. So I can't imagine like the headache that Will had recording them. Talk about DIY, like DIY recording a violin or whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Steve, do you have any questions?
So, seeing as you guys reside in New Jersey and Virginia, how does songwriting go? Like, how is your collaborative process?
How it generally works is someone will basically write like the skeleton of a song. Carl, the bassist, wrote the song "The Bottom," and then I wrote "Sinking" and "Deluge," and then we had "Drifting" from when Dane Viglione was in the band. Dane wrote the skeleton of "Drifting," and then we kept that one for the album. It doesn't happen to work out when we send each other files. Like, hey, I wrote like a bassist, like a bass for this whole song. Do you guys want to write over it? That just in the past and still to this day doesn't really get everyone going. So we have to be in a room together. We have to schedule time to be in a room so that we are just like forcing ourselves to work on something. We kind of just hope that we have something to work on when we are in the room together. It has been in the past that people will come in with like a skeleton of a full song. For the songs that we have right now, I think if we have like 10 or so, like maybe 5 of them happened in the room where we were jamming, and us, like a part of an idea split off into this thing and that, and or we pulled pieces, like we jammed on this whole thing, and then we pulled another part from something that we had prior and fitted into that song. It's been this writing process rather than one person having kind of complete control on the basis of the song, and then having people contribute what they would normally. We've been in the room kind of jamming things, and it's just been a different process. But still, we need to be in the room together for anything to happen.
Yeah, that's nice. That's probably kind of shines to like how you get so many different sounds or feelings in the album too. Is like everyone gets to bring that idea to the table.
Right, yeah. At one point when we were starting to write stuff, newer stuff after Velas, we were like, what is this stuff that we're coming up with? And we weren't like completely stoked on it. And we were like, maybe it's because we're jamming and we don't have like one person directing where the song is going. But I feel like we've kind of gotten over that and are feeling that like, this song can be its own thing, or it doesn't all have to sound like it was written in one weekend or something like that. Yeah.
I made lots of dad rock that way. I like, show up and just dad rock it out. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
What's your favorite guitar and pedal that you own?
So I really love my overdrive pedal. It's from the company Rockworks, RAWK. It's called the Night Overdrive. So it's just got like a darker tone to it. And for me, like it took me a really long time to find the type of overdrive that I was that I like really liked. And this was the first one that like didn't fuck with like didn't get too fucked by reverb. And it still kept its like nice overdrivey tone. I have the what is it? The Strymon Brigadier bucket delay. That one has a lot of like modulation on it, so it can kind of like, it doesn't necessarily have that like tape warble like the El Capistan from Strymon. It's got more of like a modulated kind of oscillation type vibe to it. Yeah. And then, your basic distortion and fuzz. I've been in the market for a better fuzz pedal.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, the overdrive and all that too. I always see everyone just like using like those OCD pedals, so it's cool to see like you're using something a little out there. Even myself, I use like the Electro Harmonix glove, and I think it's supposed to be like an homage to like the Power Glove, like Nintendo.
Oh, okay.
But it's like half the price, and it's just like a super cool sound you get out of it.
Yeah. Also, Full Tone is canceled, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that. Yeah. Sell your OCD pedals.
Exactly. Paint them, sell them. Yeah.
And then I just got a Fender Thinline Telecaster, but it's the Jim Atkins signature. So it's all black, including the neck, and it's got P90 pickups in it. I got it during quarantine though, so I haven't been able to play it like with a band. But that's been a guitar that I've been wanting for like years and years, and either never pulled the trigger or was never able to find it. So when my friend sent me a link to it, I was like, I gotta like pull some strings.
So I know you're in multiple projects. Pre-COVID, how tough was it to balance all your musical projects and your personal life?
That I think takes a ton of work. If you have a partner, it takes a super supportive partner. So luckily, my fiance is super supportive and understands how much music means to me, and music to her is also a big deal. It's like an important part of her life. There's a lot of conversations involved and how you kind of navigate being able to support yourself, being able to support each other financially, emotionally, all that stuff. We're lucky that we were able to do that work together. I think as our relationship has progressed and as I've gotten older, touring itself has taken not necessarily a backseat or has had less importance, but is just something that me and the guys kind of came together at the same time without vocally saying it to one another, that like we're not just going out to go on tour, like we want to have a reason to go on tour, and when we do go on tour, we want those shows to be good. So since Velas came out, which was 2016, we haven't gone back to the West Coast, because to go back to the West Coast would mean you're either taking off weeks of work to drive across the country and just be in a van, or you're booking those shows and this and that, or you're flying out there, and I wouldn't say that our shows on the West Coast were amazing the last time we were out there, as everyone has gotten older, and they've gotten more serious with their partners. It's even though I'm the oldest one in the band, it has been that like everyone's on the same track. So it's been easy in that way, that everyone was kind of in the same boat. I would say that I'm probably the person that pushes the band to do dumb shit more than anybody else in the band. They were a bit apprehensive when I was like, let's DIY book a European tour. But it turned out to be one of the best things we did, and then we were able to go back, and it was even better that time. I feel like you'll get the same story with anybody that's been in a DIY band and is growing up while they're in a DIY band. You have that same like, I'm going to push this as hard as I can for as long as I can, and then life hits you right in the fucking head, and you have to make those decisions that are the best for your future and for anyone that is involved with you, like their future as well. Until my current job, I've never had a job that gave me health benefits. When I was like 19 and 20, I was on my parents' insurance, and then I had to come off their insurance. That's something that weighs on how I will continue to pursue music. Like the way our shitty country is run, and the fact that we need to be like our insurance has to be tied to our job for us to be able to afford it, weighs on the way that I am able to pursue art. Like I work at Trader Joe's, so they have this policy where you can't miss more than 21 days consecutively, or like you have to take a leave of absence, or you get terminated. So that plays into how I want to pursue music, like with Burial Dance, because we are probably more able to tour because it's less people, or we're more on the same page at the moment. We had a tour that we had to cancel because of COVID in May. I was like, I can only do this amount of days because I don't want to risk my job. And I have to keep my job because I want to have some sort of stability to provide for myself, provide for my partner, to be able to afford to go on tour the next time, and this and that. So it is, I would say, for anyone that is supporting themselves and not supporting themselves through music, it is one of the toughest things to balance your art, to balance your personal life, and to balance your work life. There's a sacrifice that has to be made somewhere. When I was booking the European tour, I would start to talk to different people from Europe and would hear about all of these crazy things that their government allows them to do. Like this one guy makes guitar pedals, and because that technically falls under the category of art, he is able to get a government subsidy for like a stipend, and he is able to live off of the government because he is pursuing this artistic like venture,
Yeah.
And we don't have that here. There's no way that you can do something like that here.
Canada, right? That's a huge part of what they do. They have like all this money
Right.
for musicians.
Yeah.
I remember like I used to be a Sum 41 fan when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
not just being like, damn, they're so cool. Their government pays them to do this,
Right. It's insane. They get grants and stuff. And there are a few bands that I am like personal friends with that have gotten the grants, and then there are some bands that don't get the grants. I think it's some sort of politics involved or something like that. But to have that option is incredible.
Well, you've heard it here, folks. We set up a GoFundMe. We pay for all of the health insurance for Au Revoir. They'll never work again. We'll have them touring forever. No,
That's
Eric,
my shit.
I want to thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We had a great time talking to you.
Hell yeah,
Again,
man.
this is Eric of Au Revoir. And where can we find more about your music?
Au Revoir is on Spotify and Bandcamp. We have all that social media bullshit, the Facebook and Instagram. Not to be confused when you're looking stuff up with the front bottom song Au Revoir Adios, which happens a lot. Or Au Revoir Simone. Actually, sorry, I have to tell this story because it's incredible.
Yeah.
Someone emailed us a couple years ago when we were looking to book in Europe. This guy was like, I love your band. I would love to help you book. What do you need help with? So I emailed him back. I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is what we need help with. Thank you for reaching out. And then he emailed me back like a week later. It's like, oh, I thought you were Au Revoir Simone. Sorry, I got the names mixed up. It's like, oh, okay. That's sick, dude.
I had a similar problem. I was in a band called Tall Ship Set Sail, which is entirely too long for a title. But also, there was a big band, I think in like Britain, like it was like a British band or something that was called Tall Ships. So people would hit us up all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're in Tall Ships?" No.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Should have just wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Eric, thank you again. This has been Musicians and Makers podcast. You can find us on all of the same bullshit social medias, as well as musiciansandmakers.com. Thank you all for listening.
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks for having me.